Shocking images have shown mass graves and civilians lying in the streets in the town of Butcha, after Ukrainians liberated it from Russian forces. Warning: images and details readers might find distressing. Authorities say the proof that civilians have been is evidence that Russian forces have committed war crimes during their invasion of Ukraine. The images and reporting coming out of Butcha has prompted US President Joe Biden to call for Russian President Vladimir Putin to face trial, and Defence Minister Peter Dutton has said Australia would support any war crimes investigation into the Russian leader. But Moscow strongly denies it has civilians during the ongoing conflict. So, what can we be sure of? Let's take a look at what we know. Butcha was liberated by Ukrainian forces. Then bodies were discovered. Earlier this week, the Ukrainian government said its forces had regained control of the entire Kiev region, 5 weeks after Russia launched its invasion. Authorities said towns near the capital, such as Butcha, Irpin and Hostomel, had been reclaimed. But as Russian forces withdrew, reports began to emerge of bodies lying in the streets in Butcha. Ukrainian authorities said the bodies of at least 410 civilians were found in areas on the outskirts of Kiev. Images from around Butcha, seen by the ABC, showed many of the bodies have been lying in the open for weeks, during the time Russian forces had occupied the town. There were grisly images of battered or burned bodies left out in the open or hastily buried. Associated Press journalists reported that many victims appeared to have been shot at close range, some in the head. At least 2 had their hands tied. A mass grave was discovered in a churchyard. Satellite imagery provided by Maxa Technologies shows the grounds behind the Church of St. Andrew and Pyvos-Vanaho, All Saints below. This satellite image shows the church grounds before excavations at the site began. On March 10th, a visibly lighter patch of earth appeared to show an excavation site in the southwest corner of the churchyard. Excavation of earth can be seen in the churchyard on March 10th. On March 31st, an approximately 13.7-meter long trench could be seen. An approximately 13.7-meter long trench can be seen in the southwestern section of the area near the church. The satellite images were verified by AP journalists at the scene who witnessed bodies wrapped in black plastic piled at one end of the mass grave. Journalists took pictures next to the mass grave. The ABC has chosen to obscure the body bags. Father Andrew Gallivan said with the morgue full and the cemetery impossible to reach, the churchyard was the only place to keep them. Residents spoke of their slain loved ones. In a statement, the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office said the bodies of 5 men, with their hands bound, were found in the basement of a children's sanatorium where civilians were tortured. And AP journalists saw dozens of bodies in Butcha, including at least 13 in and around a building that local people said Russian troops used as a base. 3 other bodies were found in a stairwell, and a group of 6 were burned together. Tanya Nadashkivskaya said she buried her husband in a garden outside their apartment building after he was detained by Russian troops. His body was one of those left heaped in a stairwell. Tanya Nadashkivskaya, 57, mourns the of her husband while standing next to the place where he was buried. "Please, I am begging you, do something," she said. "It's me talking," a Ukrainian woman, a mother of 2 kids and 1 grandchild. "For all the wives and mothers, make peace on earth so no one ever grieves again." Russia is facing a fresh wave of condemnation after the civilian S. Another Butcha resident, Volodymyr Pilhutsky, said his neighbor, Pavlo Vlasenko, was taken away by Russian soldiers because the military-style pants he was wearing and the uniforms that Mr. Vlasenko said belonged to his security guard son appeared suspicious. When Mr. Vlasenko's body was later found, it had burn marks from a flamethrower, his neighbor said. "I came closer and saw that his body was burnt," Mr. Pilhutsky said. "They didn't just shoot him." Now the Ukrainian president has left the safety of his headquarters to witness the carnage. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has left Kiev for his first reported trip since the war began to see for himself what he has called the genocide and war crimes in Butcha. Volodymyr Zelensky has visited Butcha. Mr. Zelensky and other Ukrainian authorities have warned the full extent of the horrors is yet to emerge. This is only one town, one of many Ukrainian communities, which the Russian forces managed to capture, Mr. Zelensky said. In many districts of the Kiev, Chernihiv and Sumy regions, the occupiers did something that the locals did not even witness during the Nazi occupation 80 years ago. Ukrainian Prosecutor General Irina Venediktova told Ukrainian TV that a similar humanitarian situation to Butcha existed in other parts of the country where Russian forces recently left, such as the areas around the northern cities of Sumy and Chernihiv. She also said the situation in Borodyanka, which is further from Kiev, and was also held by Russian forces until recently, might be even worse. The same has been said about the southern city of Mariupol. I can tell you without exaggeration, but with great sorrow, that the situation in Mariupol is much worse compared to what we've seen in Butcha and other cities, towns, and villages nearby Kiev, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said. Meanwhile, Russia continues to deny evidence of war crimes. In his nightly video address, Mr. Zelensky pledged that Ukraine would work with the European Union and the International Criminal Court to identify Russian fighters involved in any atrocities. The time will come when every Russian will learn the whole truth about who among their fellow citizens, who gave orders, who turned a blind eye to the Mr. Zelensky said. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has dismissed the scenes outside Kiev as a stage-managed anti-Russian provocation. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has also sought to cast doubt on the images coming out of Butcha, saying they contain signs of video forgery and various fakes. M to mute, left and right arrows to seek, up and down arrows for volume. Watch 2 minutes 56 seconds 2 minutes and 56 seconds Putin should face war crimes trial, Biden. ABC or Wires.